So we actually have a variety of programs for the Esports Association. One is career readiness. So we actually work with the Career Center here to better prepare our association members to learn those life skills that they are going to need so that when they make that transition over to a career pathway.
Awesome. This guy, we gotta turn around. This guy wins almost every tournament we throw. I'm telling you. You gotta watch him live. He's gonna be something big.
CSUDH Esports Association is centered in 4 domains: academics and research, community engagement, competition, and entertainment.
We're trying to make sure that the students are prepared for the future, that they understand the diversity that media offers now, and again, look beyond the traditional outlets.
They can gain fieldwork, partnerships, as well as potential job opportunities in both the higher education and K-12 fields.
We believe that esports is a strategy and not an outcome. Our association is here to help anyone that is willing to learn how to take your gaming skills to the next level through a supporting community. If you are looking to showcase your production talents to help support our esports teams, then this is the association for you. We host online and on-site tournaments that will allow our members to showcase their competitive spirit. Our association broadcasts out our competition and practices to entertain our community as well as our global audience. We believe that by joining us, you will come out of the association feeling transformed and better prepared to transfer your skills into your career. Join today and begin to explore endless opportunities through our Esports Association here at Cal State Dominguez Hills. All right, welcome everyone to another esports talk session here at Cal State Dominguez Hills. We are excited to have you all join us. We have a very special guest that I just can't wait to introduce. But before I do any introductions, just quick announcements. As you all know, all of this is powered by our community. So we have various socials down there that if you'd like to follow, like us, leave comments, feedback, we thrive from that. So we thank you. And then also another quick announcement, our association all this semester has dedicated all streams to a wonderful organization in Extra Life. So if you feel moved and you'd like to chip in any way that you'd like, we have a donation button on the bottom of our description of our Twitch channel. All right, without any further ado, we have Crystal Mills with us today. And the topic today is how to become a writer in esports. She's the VP of content at Ritual Motion. We are truly delighted to have you, Crystal, so welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's fun to be here.
Yay. So Crystal, I just want to dive right into it. There's so much to unpack, and I don't think an hour will contain it all.
Probably not, no.
So just if you don't mind just sharing with our community a little bit about your background, if you could, what was your academic backing and how did you start your pathway to gaming and esports?
Sure. My path was a little weird. So I didn't go to school for journalism or anything like that. I ended up going to school to be a surgical technologist, which obviously has nothing to do with writing and esports. And I did that after years of doing freelance work in the industry. Just to, I think I started at a weird time. I think that's the whole picture of it is, I think when I started a little bit before 2010. Writing in esports, being a journalist in esports wasn't, it was a thing, but it really wasn't as much of a professional job as it is now. It was often seen as a hobby. So when I first started, I just created my own blog and Unfortunately, it started out with really bad poetry, and I deleted all of that, thankfully, and decided that I was going to start writing about video games because that's what I loved. And from there, got into Call of Duty Esports. That was kind of my gateway. Made connections from there. Um, First started writing with Esports Nation back when it was like the #1 publication for Call of Duty, and made contacts from there. Since then, I've worked with Optic Gaming, I've worked with The Score, Esports Insider, Benzinga. It's been a line of awesome publications and organizations that I've worked with. And now I'm the VP of Content at Ritual Motion, where we talk about health and wellness in esports and all of the topics that kind of circulate around that. And that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Wow, amazing, amazing. And thank you for sharing that. I mean, just how you dabbled, right? And got into it just to say, hey, look, this is a passion of mine. And did you see there was a lack of writing or just not enough being shared in the space? Is that where you took those initial steps?
I guess in a way, I think more for me, it was just because, I love to write and I love video games. And so for me, it just kind of made sense to marry the two.
Hmm.
And then from there, kind of just snowballed into esports and what it is today. But it was weird because it was like being on two sides of the fence. So like when I started, most of the people that were doing this were, doing it after school. Like you had high school kids that were coming in here trying to develop their writing skills, which is awesome. But because of it, I don't think it was taken very seriously as a profession. So there weren't as many opportunities because of it. And I think, I tried to kind of push it for a while, doing freelance work and things like that, but it didn't really feel like a career at that time, which is one of the reasons why I decided to go into healthcare, which is, something that I've always had interest and skills in as well. So then I ended up going into pediatric surgery. And of course, life is weird and it throws you a curveball when you least expect it. And then I ended up back in esports full time. So it's weird.
Gosh, thank you. That's so true. Life will throw unexpected opportunities, challenges, everything under the sun.
It does.
And I mean, yeah, and it's interesting, right, to see how you've seen from your time of entrance into esports, especially on the writing side, how the industry has changed and evolved. What else would you share that has made a dramatic change, if you will, that has impacted esports in a positive way?
I think just as a whole, we're seeing a lot more interest from the outside. Because when we started esports, it was because all of us played these games and we loved them and we were trying to develop a community, but that growth can only go so far. So I think people started to recognize that this is viable entertainment. There's money in it. There's a future for it, and I think that's when you started to really see things booming, which we still have a long way to go. But I think that's kind of what pushed everything into the spotlight. Is kind of what made writing a little bit more of a serious role. I mean, now you're seeing for example, my role now as a VP of content, like you're seeing more leadership roles like that being developed and started, I guess you could say kickstarted through esports. So it's been a journey.
Yeah, no, and thank you. I mean, and unpack it a little bit for us because you mentioned you started off writing bad poetry.
Very bad.
So for those that are like looking to start, hey, you're going to have some bad poetry sometimes or in your beginning stages. So how is it that you started to get into, your interest in writing and also kind of to refine those skills to make it, the best feeling of, hey, I've published something that is very newsworthy and relevant for everyone to, read and share?
Mm-hmm. For me, I started because I've always liked to write. English in general just kind of clicked with me growing up. So I've always been a writer. And obviously, as you write more, you obtain more skill and you learn a lot more. And that's kind of what happened when I moved into more of the gaming and esports area. I was able to read the other things that were being published and kind of, learning to myself, how do you write a headline? How do you hook people in? How do you go about sharing news when you're not the one breaking it? Like there are a lot of tiny little things that you learn as you go. And for me, because of the position that I was in, the position that esports was in when I first started, you didn't really have mentors or people to teach you how to do that. And, I didn't come from a journalist background. So it was literally just taking what I was learning on screen and then implementing it and finding my own angles and building a portfolio from there.
Gosh, no, good point. You just mentioned, I mean, many good points, Crystal, but you're right. Who are those mentors, right? Who are those, folks that provided you the inspirations? And if I may, how did you think outside the box to think, okay, where am I going to get some examples of some really specific content when it comes to esports? Where was your first step, if you don't mind sharing?
I think a knee-jerk reaction for me was just I started reading the longer features from traditional sports. So I would log into ESPN and just kind of read and get a feel about how these people were writing about these players and these games. Like how do you make it more about the people that are playing versus just the game itself? How do you, sprinkle in a little dose of humanity in it? Because, for us especially, we're not always, in front of each other when we're playing video games. It's just a screen. So you kind of lack that personal touch at times. And I think that when esports was first starting to be covered, I mean, you had your event recaps and game analysis, which, is cool. And you see that everywhere. But you didn't really see like the storylines behind it. You didn't see the rivalries. You didn't see like, always the team switch ups. Like there's so much that went into it that wasn't being fully explored at that time. So for me, it was a nice challenge because it was a way for me to kind of dig in and try to do something a little different. And it just, I mean, it's spiraled from there. I mean, you're seeing stories about players and stuff all the time now. Like that's just normal, but then it wasn't.
Right. And you're taking folks, I mean, that are reading this beyond the content a little bit, right? It's almost like, hey, this is the for lack of a better word, but the backstage, right? The background, the evolution of what led somebody to a space that they're in today. And it gives people perspective to know, okay, this is really what it takes to get to a space like this. It doesn't just happen by, snap of a finger kind of deal. Or a click of a button or anything like that. But really interesting to take on that kind of, emulation of, hey, this is how, traditional sports industry operates. There is a way to take some of that and incorporate it and then actually start identify those, similarities and also those contrasts to say, hey, this is where the opportunity is that allows esports to be the unique space that it is today. So, I mean, really neat to hear inspirations. That's I'm sure a common question that you probably get, but it's, yeah, where do you start? Once you started, how do you continue to essentially, refine and get those, encouragement to continue to write, what I mean, more and more compelling stories. But yeah, no, thank you. And if I may share a little bit more or ask you a little bit more, Crystal, about, so you mentioned about your writing, how you started, hey, you know what, I wasn't going into school for writing, but I got myself interested because I've always loved games. And I felt like there was a way for me to storytell, to share a little bit more beyond what our community is doing, especially when they're playing games. What was that break moment, if you will, like that moment you decided to take that first, organizational step to say, hey, this is something I'm going to do? Like, when was that first commitment happen?
I think for me, it's kind of hard because for me, I knew that there wasn't really as many opportunities versus the way things are today. But I think for me, that kind of lit a fire was when I first started writing for Esports Nation. And, granted, we weren't getting paid. It was a pretty small publication compared to what you're seeing now at the time. But it was the most popular too. So it was interesting to see, how people were reacting to to what we were publishing. And I think what kind of told me that this was something that I really wanted to do was I was waking up at like 4 o'clock in the morning to watch matches all day long. So at least 12 hours that day, writing down, specific plays, players, and what they were doing, different types of analysis on different types of gameplay and stuff like that. And seeing a team working together and understanding that, hey, this is important. This is something that's going to help fuel this industry. And I think that's what really pushed me into the spot where I was like, I really want to do this. I don't know that it's necessarily going to happen, especially from a full-time aspect, but I knew that I wanted to do it. So years after that, it was just writing as much as I possibly could.
Wow, that's so cool. I mean, just to hear that you pursued your passion and, not knowing what those outcomes would look like, but just knowing that there is a gap here and there's an opportunity to fill, and to inspire others through the process of it. So, and Crystal, like if you could share a little bit more tips for those that are, hey, a little bit in those same shoes, like there's this hesitancy, like I need to know what that outcome looks like before I jump in. What would you, share and encourage? So those that, are those writers out there, or maybe just looking to dabble a little bit and see if they have a talent into it, what would you recommend?
Dabbling is the best way to go for it. I mean, just jump in and do it. Whether I mean, if you don't have a portfolio, then my advice then is just do what I did, create a WordPress or a blog that's similar to that, and just put out content. Because I mean, you're not going to be a writer unless you write. And I mean, even if you get into it and you decide that maybe this isn't for me, you're still obtaining really good skills that you're going to need in another area. So I mean, if you're on the fence and you're thinking about it, my advice is just to do it and see what happens. And as you go from there, if you do decide that this is what you want to do, there are a lot of publications out there now, a lot of resources that you can kind of tap into. Me, for instance, so you're welcome to contact me anytime and I'll help out however I can. There's a lot more opportunity now. There are a lot more people that are willing to teach and kind of help others get into the industry now. So it's a really, really positive and a really good time to get into it.
I love it. I love it. Thank you, gosh, for opening up your arms. Take us all in. Take us under the crystal wing. So, and then Crystal, I mean, you said so many great points. I mean, writing is really, you just have to do it, right? Writers write. You have to start that process sooner rather than later. And, the ability, your skill sets and how it's helped you climb many different spaces, especially with a lot of the publications organizations that you just mentioned. Now, currently working for a very, very neat organization in Ritual Motion. If you can share a little bit about, what you're doing in Ritual Motion that has, separated from other sources, if you will, or other publications that you've worked with in the past, that has allowed to marry a lot of the health component and your writing skills, two things that you have major passion in, and wait a second, a third element, gaming. So it sounds like you're just getting to do more and more what you love, because you're pushing that initiative forward. So if you don't mind sharing what Virtual Motion does and for our community and what is it that you're currently doing in that role?
Yeah, sure. So in a nutshell, Ritual Motion is a lifestyle brand in esports that is all about health and wellness. We cover issues of diversity, inclusion, everything that kind of fits under that umbrella, whether it's physical health or mental health, nutrition. We cover all of that stuff. We love to bring on guest writers that have that professional knowledge to share. This is, if you're experiencing hand pain or wrist pain, this is a way to prevent that, or this is a way to, help ease that. So we're trying to kind of bridge that gap between, a kid playing 8 to 12 hours a day, feeling a hand pain because, they've been playing Call of Duty all day and they don't really know why. Yeah. And they don't know how to fix that. And we're kind of trying to ignite those conversations that weren't really happening until now. And you're starting to see more people kind of hop onto that and realize that health in esports is serious and there are injuries. There's a lot that goes into it mentally. So we're trying to be the one that generates that conversation and awareness for people. And me particularly as the VP of content, I lead the charge as far as that voice of our company. So all of the editorial content, all the podcasts, any videos, anything that's coming out that's content related is kind of under my umbrella, I guess you could say. So hiring freelance writers, scheduling times to do podcasts, having meetings with people that want to learn more about esports or want to collaborate in some way. That's what I do. I think I called it like an editor in chief on steroids.
Seriously, I just heard so much right now. I'm thinking, how do you time manage that all?
I don't
But
know.
that was the next question, to tell us your secret formula.
It took a while. It's still a work in progress. I mean, and it's not that, I mean, the thing is that it's not just finding the time to schedule work. I mean, there's a lot that goes into what I do with Ritual, but it's also scheduling, how do I need to take my breaks? I need to go exercise. I'm doing boxing classes now, so I need to find time to do that. I need to find time to eat right. Like everything kind of plays in that. And I think a lot of people don't really think about that when they see people or talk about people that are in esports or anything, because to them it's just video games. So there's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah. And you're absolutely right, and definitely concur with that. It's so true that, hey, from the outside, those that are not familiar with the space, they only see the interface, right? And so again, those who are writers like yourself are able to share a different lens and perspective behind it all. And what Ritual is doing, so I mean, if not now, then when, right? It's been highly needed for a long time, and especially even just, this is something to ask you, Crystal, like how has the pandemic affected even Ritual's Motion's movement, if you will, and cause?
I think for me, especially from a content standpoint, there's a lot more discussion about how much time you're putting into gaming. Is there any kind of exhaustion that's coming from that? Did you game more before the pandemic versus now? How is that affecting your mental state? Are you able to get outside and move around? Are you eating right because of it? Like there are a lot of things that are going into it now that people are kind of struggling with that maybe they didn't necessarily struggle with before. So it's an important conversation to have. Is kind of, I think one of the words that we always kind of rest on is balance. How is your life balanced? How are you going to plan to create this balance in your life? And if you can't, then what are those barriers and how do you break those?
Oh gosh, yeah, that's so true and so needed. I mean, even if you're looking at yourself as a competitive athlete, everyone needs balance, and especially if you're putting in those competitive hours of training, you need balance in other aspects, right? So I mean, again, very key in how it's all being shared and displayed, so that those that are looking to enter the space have a little bit of, okay, now I get a better picture of what all of this looks like, thanks to the content that's being shared. And yeah, so true. I think it's really made an impact in people's balancing schedule because of this eruption of, hey, we're now indoors. We're more homebodies than ever before. So yeah, I'm sure there's been an uptick on certain areas of being on the computer or other aspects too that go along with it. But yeah, and then Crystal, I mean, the fact that you're sharing that there's more people now entering the space of writing. Now there's a community, there's a network that's being formed. Has there been any kind of workshops of any sort that you would strongly recommend, or especially for those that, hey, perhaps, hey, I'm in the high school realm right now and looking to start an esports association. I love to write personally. What is it that you would recommend for students that are in indoors right now and thinking, what else can I do besides just the game content aspect of esports?
Yeah, I mean, for me, one of the best resources that I ever found was Women in Games.
Mm,
Before I became an ambassador, even just the amount of people and the different areas that they worked in, whether it was writing or coding or anything that you can think of that exists in gaming and esports, there was someone there that knew how to do it. So I think it's finding those communities that are very valuable. eFuse is a huge one that I think every student should probably jump on and get involved with. There more and more opportunities are springing up through eFuse as well. And you're going to start seeing more in particular anyway, especially as the collegiate space expands. I mean, it's already expanding pretty dramatically right now. I can't talk. I think it's finding and networking and finding those communities and those organizations that kind of specialize in resources and education and just finding that space and that group and kind of putting your work out there and see what happens.
see what happens. There you go. I love it. I love it. Now, this is a side question. This was a question that was brought up by one of our students. Esports is very fast when you're watching it. How do you hold a lot of that information and break it down to separate tiers to organize your thoughts and what you're actually going to prepare? So I appreciate that question. That's one of our students that just reached out. So yeah, Crystal, if you don't mind sharing us, like how do you organize so many thoughts that are happening so that way you have that moment to collect it all?
Honestly, sometimes I don't because my mind is just going constantly. But honestly, I think it's about taking a step back and forcing it to kind of slow down a little bit because esports is, I mean, it's fast.
Yeah.
I mean, whether you're focusing on a game itself or you're focusing on the industry as a whole, like no matter what, esports just has that rapid pace that's not stopping. It's finding that area that kind of clicks with you. Like for me, I don't like writing recaps, or I don't like in-game analysis. I don't really enjoy things like that, so I struggle a little bit more with that side. So it's kind of finding what you're good at, what you do enjoy, and then kind of branching out from there. And I think that when you do that, you tend to absorb a little bit more and you learn a lot of different things that you probably never really recognized before. And it kind of helps. It's kind of a web, I guess. It kind of helps you connect with all those different areas of writing and esports, and it kind of develops your skills that way.
That's awesome. And so, when it comes to, thank you for sharing that. That's, yeah. I mean, my comment to that is you're absolutely right. Just the collection of how do I take what's going on screen and being able to analyze it, put into thought, can be a very daunting experience, and then, you'll have to see what comes out of it just to see how, it reads through for others that are brand new to the space. And I guess that's the next question too, is as you're writing, are you, I'm sure you're always thinking about the audience, but what is that audience that you're looking to reach every single time that you're publishing?
Through Ritual Motion, it's more about education. Esports is basically this giant empty canvas right now as far as education goes. So many people are trying to get into the space that don't really understand it. And so many people that are already in the space don't really understand everything that goes along with it. So it's targeting the people that want to have that information, want to learn a little bit more about it, especially from Ritual Motion standpoint, that health aspect that many people never think about. So it's basically just targeting, it's targeting anyone that's interested. There's not, I think it depends on the publication that you're writing for. So like, if you're writing for Esports Insider, then you're probably writing a little bit more about the people that are interested in the business behind the industry, versus how a player did in this game, or the mental health of a team. There's different branches that are involved, and it's just all about kind of finding where you fit and then moving forward from there.
Okay, great. And this is another question too that was also surfaced. I know you mentioned too when you were going to school, it had nothing to do with, what you're doing today, which, that's the curveball that was thrown at you.
Mhm.
But what is it that, you said you love writing. What were things that you like to write about prior to, gaming or esports that opened your eyes to think, okay, maybe this is something I do have a interest in doing and not doing that direction?
Well, obviously, really bad poetry.
Now I'm interested, Crystal. Now we have
No,
to read your poetry. You're gonna have
no.
to go to the archives.
I, they will run me out of this industry. No, I started out like I said, I loved poetry, but I also really enjoyed fiction. I didn't really go anywhere with that, but that's fine. I mean, that's kind of where a lot of people get their start at, is writing in fiction, because that's just kind of a go-to.
Mhm.
From there, it was a bit more of, I guess you could say, essay writing,
Mhm.
which, when I tell people that, they look at me and they're like, "Oh, why would you want to do that in your free time?" But I mean, that's what led me into creating a blog and, moving into gaming and esports. It wasn't all just, hey, let's replicate news articles. Let's go in and review this game, or let's talk about these characters that I really loved.
Mhm.
And it snowballs from there. Like, you're going to start at one specific area and then not really realize it, but years later you're going to end up in a different area altogether. It's just, the point is just, you have to start somewhere.
Right, right. And and that's the beauty of it all with esports too, and particularly when it comes to activating, right? You have to start somewhere, but there's so many opportunities to engage in internships, and this could be a great, like you mentioned, this is a great time to do so, just because of the opportunities you just mentioned too. And the great organizations you just mentioned right now, Women in Games, eFuse, there's opportunities out there, and even workshops and things of that nature that if you show the interest, well, they'll respond back with opportunities, right? And what you're taking in with school, although may not seem as highly interested, but knowing that you're getting the skills to essentially take those skills and start applying it to the areas of high interest. And who knows, this is where the dialogue begins with a teacher or professor or mentor, what have you, to say, hey, look, I'm interested in this space, and you get to walk them through it. So leads to another question. Uh, Parents, family members, when you shared what it is that you were doing, what did they think?
I still have an issue with this. For me, I'll compare it. So when I became a surgical technologist, obviously a very traditional job, you know, it's easy for someone to be like, oh, what do you do? And it's like, oh, well, I work in pediatric surgery. Oh, cool. I know what that is. Moving on. Now, everyone's like, oh, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, I'm the VP of content at Ritual Motion. We write about esports. Crickets. It's like, they have no idea what it is. They don't know how to ask questions or where to even begin. And it's gotten to the point now where I say, I lead content at a media company, and then leave it at that. It's an opportunity for education, especially for parents, especially for the parents of the kids that want to get into esports, whether it's competing or something else. It's about kind of highlighting the skills that you get from it, because I think sometimes parents look at it and they're like, oh, my kid's playing more video games. They already do that when they're at home. Why are they doing this at school now? Where is it going to lead? Is it going to be good for them? And I think it's kind of translating that into, well, these are the hard and soft skills that you get from this. This is what these skills can apply to. I mean, your kid can be a writer, they can be a graphic designer, it could be a coder, it could be a player. There's so many different things that are in this industry that parents don't really understand. And I think it's our job to kind of open that world up to them and say, hey, this is very valuable, and not just, financially, but it teaches a lot of skills.
Yeah. Gosh, so thank you for sharing that too, Chris. I mean, it's so true. And I'll ditto that too. It's interesting when you have that conversation with parents. In many cases, it's I don't know if it's real unless there's a job out there, right? And sometimes and it's well understood. I get where parents' mindsets are coming from, but the fact that there is opportunities more so now than ever before to say, hey, your child or our students can essentially start gaining internship like skills at an environment that's high pace, that essentially is companion with education, right? It's going to go hand in hand. So you have an education and experience both having that platform to go coincide together, and then to have more people leading the charge to talk about the many aspects that go into esports and into gaming, um, will help that message push forward, right? With people that, whether it's parents or family members, what have you, those that don't quite understand it. And I think majority of it, it's yeah, you're right, they don't know where to start the questions, right? It's like okay, where do we go from here? So tell us more about esports. Where does that dialogue start? That's always a tricky one. And for those more so than ever, either living at home with parents, that you're in a space and parents can kind of see what it is that you're doing. I think there's more opportunity there to start those dialogues, to say, hey, look, I'm into gaming, but this is one aspect that you're seeing.
Mhm.
And I play the game too, to also tell the story of what my other friends or my teammates are doing, so that we can appreciate a little bit more what you're seeing on camera or on stream. That helps encourage others that there's many opportunities that are there. But yeah, thank you for sharing. And that has to be kind of um, a tough road to hit every now and then. It's like, okay, if people don't capture it right away, it's maybe there's a hesitation of like fear of like, okay, I it's not you know traditionally known for that person, and so how do you move it into that direction? I think that's a whole new question segment on its own.
Yeah.
Seriously. But yeah, no, thank you for chiming in on that. Just because these are questions that are being surfaced more so. It's like, hey, this is something I like to do. And I think all parents or everybody would not argue to say, hey, pursue what you love, right? And you're doing exactly that. Um, so that's really awesome. And so, going back to your time in, or you're still active. So this is now a personal question when it comes to your gaming experience. So I heard Call of Duty. Is that, I mean, when did you have that pinpoint of, hey, this is my game. This is the game that I will invest some time into it, and then even write about it, go so far as to share more.
It was probably the first time I played it. Call of Duty 4 was my first. It wasn't my first Call of Duty, but it was the first Call of Duty that I played online.
Oh.
I didn't have. I mean, at the time, it was, what was it, the Xbox 360 and the PS3. Yeah. I didn't have either one. So the first time that I played was at a friend's house, and they were like, "Yeah, you can play online. These are other people that you're playing against." And I was like, "Oh, okay." I was pretty good at it, and kind of went from there. And I was like, this is it. I mean, there was a time where, in my mind, me being 18 years old and not being smart, I was like, I'm gonna go pro in this. I'm really good at it. And of course, it never happened. But I mean, it opened the door. And I mean, if I hadn't played that at a friend's house, then I probably wouldn't be doing what I'm doing right now.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and see, that's where exactly everybody has that either game title or that story to share. Like, that's what opened a whole new world for you, right? And so I know we have a lot of Call of Duty fans out there, and those that are competing competitively. I'm sure they share the same sentiment. It's like, hey, this is the game that I'm going to pursue because it gives me, I don't know, alleviates the stress, or it helps me connect with others. And hearing everyone's responses too that comes with that is just amazing. And sometimes I don't think that's the message that gets heard. You know what I mean? It's like, hey, yes, you're just playing the game, but there's more to that, right? It's more that happens when you're playing the game.
Mhm.
But so excellent, excellent. And so, Crystal, so if you could share a little bit more too about, how has, your time with Ritual, since you became VP, been, you know, what is it that you've been embarking on with new projects that are up and coming that, if you could share that, that Ritual is embarking on?
I mean, for me, when I first started as the VP too, I was still working full time in surgery. So it was kind of like, for the first part, it was just me trying to flip that,
Right.
and you have to create your brand. Thankfully, Ritual had already existed and people knew of the brand and kind of what their mission was, but there wasn't a lot of content that kind of pushed that forward. So for me, it was getting that voice out there. And I just did what I did best, and just wrote as much as I could and published that. And, from there, obviously, we have more writers that are on that are doing that. It's more video, doing what I'm doing now, trying to connect with as many people as possible, and talking about this and talking about health and esports, and, what's important about it. I mean, it's kind of an open question because there's so much that we're planning on doing, and it's hard to pinpoint one specific thing that we're doing because it's just this general movement of awareness, I think. And you know things are happening, and something could happen tomorrow that's going to be amazing that I have no idea about it right now. So it's a whirlwind right now.
Nice, nice, nice. So I mean, and that speaks something to a notion of, okay, yes, you're writing, but there's other aspects to writing. It's tremendous networking. It's meeting tons of people. What other skill sets would you say complements, many writers or good writers, what have you, those that want to enter that space that maybe they should start looking into either practicing on or developing more skills? What is it that you would, strongly recommend?
I think that I would recommend not just being a writer. And
Mm.
it is kind of, I have to be really careful when I say that, because you don't want to, be a jack of all trades, because then, you're a master of none, right?
Right, right, right.
So you find your spot. Like, I know that I was really good at writing and that's what I love to do. But I wanted to kind of move away from being known as a journalist and more of a general content creator, because there's
Mhm.
so much that is involved with what goes on in esports. So I mean, you can write as much as you want, but maybe repurpose it, make some video out of it, maybe start a live stream, kind of reach out a little bit more, make it a little bit more personal. And I think that that's kind of what pushes that success a little bit more, because people can read your article and they know that you wrote it, they see your name there, but they don't know you.
Right.
So this is kind of another way to bridge that connection. So I always say, yeah, you want to be a writer, that's great, but if you want to kind of go beyond that, then be a content creator, do some other stuff as well, kind of sprinkle it all in together.
Love that. Love that. And definitely when it comes to, when you think about writing, right, it's not just pen to paper, but it starts somewhere, right? It's an idea, it's a draft, but then pushing it into the content creation, nudging it there makes that writing piece come alive. And especially now with so many different tools that we have, for many cases accessible, it can essentially help those that, hey, I'm going to think outside the box now because I've got the ideas down, or I've got my draft down. Now I'm able to push it forward to see how, everything I'm writing about can, draw this picture, right? Or draw this illustration of, this is what I've been writing about, right? Or I've been talking about. And allows people to start seeing that vision, if you will, to get more people to get into that content creation space. So I love that. That's so cool. And it's really helped transform, is what I'm hearing. Hey, this is sort of like another evolutionary step of like, hey, this is how writing can transform. And especially esports has that ability to do that,
Mm-hmm.
with a lot of the embracing of content creation into it. So how neat, how that's really cool, Crystal. That's awesome. And so, what is it that you would encourage, especially now, for those that are in, college, senior year? Okay, we're graduating. It's time. Love esports, want to dabble into it more. What is it that, would help those that want to get into the industry, that would be good words of encouragement or strong recommendations that you would like to share?
Uh, I think what my number one advice would be, and this is for anyone getting into the industry, is find your skill.
Mm,
So, I hear from a lot of people all the time. They're like, you know what, I want to work in esports. I don't care if I have to be a janitor at this organization's place. I just want to be in esports somehow. And I'm like, you know what, that's great. It's awesome that you want to be in this industry and be a part of it. But people that are hiring are not gonna see that as a good thing. Like, for me it would have been like, hey, I really want to be in esports. I love to write. I'd like to be a journalist. Here's my portfolio. I already built my site. This is what I write about. How do I get started? It's literally just pinpointing what your skills are, what you want to do, and then applying yourself toward that, and seeing how your skills can manifest in that area. And the cool part about esports too, though, is that this is a world where people can kind of carve their own path. It's not like going into healthcare where you go to school for a certain number of years, you graduate, you go to your interviews, you start your training, and then you end up in a specialty. Like, it's not as straightforward as that. So you kind of have that open ability to be like, you know what, I kind of want to do something a little bit different. I want to be a content creator, but I want to put a spin on it. And you
mm,
can go and you can do that. And you make connections that way. And who knows, you end up, VP of content at another company. There's a huge world that I think that not many people have explored yet in esports. And so, I mean, like I keep telling people, this is the perfect time to get involved.
yeah, gosh. So I love it. I hear so many different things and opportunities. It's to say, hey, yes, everything that you're studying in college or in school right now, they're all going to be applicable skills to whatever new space you want to venture in this world of esports. And if anything, it can inform the practices, or it can at least start opening up different pathways that could lead to new opportunities. And like you mentioned, like, you just do it, and you start finding the skills too along with it, but you start honing in the skills that you start noticing that, hey, this is something I really like to do. And then it doesn't feel so much like work, right? It's that old saying.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, I truly appreciate, those kinds of, encouragement words, only because you'll get that a lot from people, especially students that want to go into the space, but don't know what that first step looks like. And there's also that other aspect of, yes, it's great to try new things, but as you try all these new things and wearing all sorts of different hats, really look at what is it that you really like to do, so that way you can start honing in that skill set, so that it could lead to something very, very focused and concentrated, that could lead to something really cool, like the position you hold. And if I may ask, Crystal, so I'm assuming you work with a lot of different writers. What is it that, outside of just, not just the writing component that they can write, and also the content piece, what other things are you looking at overall for a person to say, hey, this person will be a great acclamation to an organization or a team that you're looking for?
Uh, I think my number one is that ability to learn. Someone that's going to come in and know that maybe they don't know everything. Like, I would rather hire someone that knew absolutely nothing about esports, but wanted to get in and learn a little bit more about it.
Mm,
It's kind of that willingness to grow as well.
mm,
I mean, you get people that come in and they're like, I've been writing for 5 years now. I'm a pro. I know what I'm talking about. Well, for Ritual Motion in particular, it's a little bit different than other publications because we're not writing the recaps or the storylines in games. You know, we have a different area that we're in that I don't think a lot of people have really ventured into. And honestly, it's been, you know, kind of playing by the ear for me as well. It's, I think, because it's more of a personal story that a lot of writers that I work with now kind of get involved in. So it's kind of ripping away what you know about esports and writing and try and implement something a little bit more personal and something a little bit newer. Definitely, if you're going to enter the space, just be willing to learn about it, because I mean, it's growing constantly, and even for me, like every single day, I'm learning something new about this industry that I didn't know before. So it's that's just be flexible.
I love that. I mean, I think that sounds amazing and exciting, right? It's like you're in a space that something new can just happen today. I mean,
Exactly.
it should feel that way, right? For, you know, for many cases, right? To keep things exciting, new, and then to be part of something, you know, that can make history. You know, just to even go so bold to say that. But yeah, I mean, and from what I hear from Ritual Motion, I mean, just so much doing it centered around the focus of health and wellness to our community so that our community can stay up, right? Well, if we don't find, you know, those, you know, ways to connect, then I don't know what else are we playing esports for? I mean, there's such a component embedded to connecting, you know, to the literal and figurative, you know, part of the language, but it's so important, you know, to get, you know, more people involved to understand like other aspects to, hey, this isn't just the play by play. This is the full, you know, 360 of what makes somebody holistic, you know, to enter that space to begin with, to actually get some really cool, you know, highlight reels of a team or, you know, of an individual play, what have you. So that's super real. I mean, that's just awesome. You know what I mean? And it gets me excited to know what the future goes for Ritual Motion, for yourself, and then also for other organizations that are entering in spaces like this. Very cool. All right, Crystal, you gave us a ton of awesome, awesome tips, advice, strong encouragements. Um, I will have to ask for one more words of wisdom here as we're hitting that time frame. If you could just share just words of wisdom to our community, you know, to take us home.
All right, words of wisdom. Me and wisdom normally don't go together.
Come on now. No, no,
um,
no.
Honestly, the best thing that I can say is just jump in and do it. Just get started. I mean, you have to start somewhere. It's not necessarily going to be good. You're not going to be an expert in the field as you start. I mean, that comes with time, but I mean, we all started somewhere, and you know, one day you're going to be, you know, leaders in this industry. So it's time to learn and just jump in.
Love it. I love it. All right, Crystal, you've been such a pleasure. Honestly, you know, having you, we're going to definitely invite you back for more, to talk about more topics that honestly, you've got a plethora of knowledge in esports and just so much to unpack that I knew just this hour wouldn't do it. But want to thank you all for tuning in. You just heard it from Crystal Mills, VP of Content of Ritual Motion. And for Ritual Motion, check them out, please, for the really neat things that they're doing. And if you want to find Crystal Mills' work, I'm sure the website, you're able to find it and read about a lot of the content that they're producing. And for those that, this is for anyone to inform and encourage all audiences. So we want to thank you again to our producers. Thank you so much. And for our community out there, we're signing out and we'll see you on the next one. Take care.